Hello! We have two stories today of malicious compliance, and the first reminded me of my most recent YouTube rabbit hole binges. Experts. You know those videos where people are just amazing at their trades, like people laying tile and they cut it just perfect without even measuring. Or a guy knocks a single brick and they all just fall like dominoes into a perfect row. There's just something magical about seeing someone work who is a master at their craft. And it's no less interesting in written form. Our first story tells a tale of a world-renowned forensic handwriting expert that has his world thrown for a loop when he meets a student with an unconventional writing style. It all comes down to the last assignment of the semester, with final grades and future careers on the line in a head-to-head battle of expert versus chicken scratch in Story 1. This occurred back in the 70s, and before I start, I want to emphasize I was never stupid enough and will never be stupid enough to use my hidden talent. I was taking an elective criminal forensic, CSI stuff, night course at a local community college. The best part about taking this course was the instructor. He gave us an in-depth tour at the U.S. Criminal Forensic Lab, where he worked as the question document examiner, i.e., handwriting analysis, signature matching, etc. Ooh, true crime tinglies! Also, since computers were barely introduced into forensics at this time, all handwriting analysis and matching was done by hand. And this instructor was one of, if not the best, in the world. It was a great course studying many facets of criminal forensics and taking the amazing lab tour. As the course was coming to the end, the question document facet approached, the instructor's specialty. At the end of the class, just before it started, the instructor wrote a paragraph on the board, and we each had 2 sheets of blank lined paper. He told us to write the paragraph, only the paragraph, any way we want, on one sheet. Then again, on the other sheet, trying to disguise our handwriting. You are committing forgery. The instructor left, and we all started writing. When done, one student, not me, collected all the sheets, mixed them up, and took them to the instructor. We all looked forward to the next class where the instructor would present matched sheets. He planned to explain to us why our forgery attempts failed and how he would testify in court to prove it. Because I wanted to go home, I made it easy on myself. For my forgery attempt, I wrote the paragraph in print on one sheet and in cursive on the other sheet. This was even though we were told that it was a failed way to disguise handwriting. Now, for a little background on my handwriting. It's bad. I mean, really bad. And I have held pencils and pens wrong since I learned to write. The easiest way to explain it is I write with a closed fist, right-handed. In elementary school, my parents hired a tutor to try to teach me to write again from scratch. Their attempts, including putting plastic things on pencils to make my preferred grip uncomfortable, failed miserably. In high school, I had a teacher tell me I would amount to nothing because I had issues writing legibly. Basically, my print is somewhat legible and my cursive, good luck. But that should make no difference. Now, back to the story. At the beginning of the next class, the normal, happy-go-lucky instructor looked very upset as he walked in. The first words out of his mouth were, if anyone played a practical joke on him, he did not appreciate it. The whole class, approximately 15 students, looked at each other totally confused. The instructor then again tried to get someone to confess, but we all continued to look confused. The instructor calmed down a little and decided to continue with the class as he would normally have done so. From the stack of papers he was handed at the end of the last class, he picked out the top 2 sheets and said, in court speak, how he deduced that the same person wrote both. Then, a student would admit it was their failed forgery attempt, and the instructor would continue with the next 2 sheets. When there were just 2 sheets left, the instructor lifted them up for all the class to see. Looking straight at me, he said he could not testify in court saying the same person wrote both paragraphs. With a scared look on my face, I said both sheets were mine and I wrote both paragraphs. So, in front of the instructor and the whole class, I again wrote the paragraph, once in print and once in cursive. The instructor walked away, shaking his head and mumbling something like he had never seen this before. After that, the instructor looked at and spoke to me differently as my classmates created some obvious nicknames for me like the Forger. I got an A in the class and was very happy when it ended. Edit, trying to anticipate some questions. Exactly why I could do this, I have no idea. I figured if I was in school today, I would be diagnosed with some minor learning disability. No, I cannot demonstrate this now. I have not written in cursive in 40 plus years and I'm too old to relearn. Cursive. Think loopy letters all connected together, which thankfully is being forgotten. In the 80s, I found a career that matched my handwriting skills. Computers. In the comments, Warple still quoting, "Career that matched your handwriting skills," said, smiley face. Zorb1 replied, "A doctor writing prescriptions." Isu Trickster added, "You've got a face for radio." Dear Beautiful said, "I only have one question that was not included in your FAQ. Were you, by any chance, born left-handed and forced to transition to right-handed as a small child?" My brother was, and he had some of the worst handwriting I've ever seen for a long time, and the awkward pencil grip as well. Now that he's been writing right-handed for over 40 years, either it's getting better slowly or I'm just learning to read it more easily. OP replied, "Good question, but no, I did everything right-handed." But it was not unusual to have that change forced on kids. I remember the stories from friends. Someone said, "You probably have dysgraphia. It's like dyslexia, but for writing instead of reading." My son has it. As he enters his General Certificate of Secondary Education year next year, we are grateful for his iPad. Ooh, how thrilling would it be to take a class with a world-renowned forensic specialist? Just think of the stories they'd have and hopefully share. I have to say though, I don't think being able to throw people off your writing is typically the way forgers go. Aren't they usually trying to emulate someone else's writing in order to commit some type of fraud? Either way, he stumped the professor, who was clearly super upset that someone had bested his ability to match writing. I mean, OP is probably like 1 in a million or something nutty like that. Our second story, I'll be honest, I liked it more even though it's not as racy and deserving of the title story award. There's just something really tasty about malicious compliance when it's over something trivial. It's the pettiness I love and need. So when one story sets out to combine both, well, it's like Cece catnip. It's just so good. In our story, one Karen decides to pick a fight with the lost and found, declaring it as lost, without any found. Well, karma came knocking for Karen in story 2. Posted part of this as a comment on another sub, and it was suggested the full story would fit better here. Or possibly r/petty revenge, depending on how one takes it. A tale from about 10 years ago, so obviously conversations are to the best of memory. Anywho, like most public places, our library had a lost and found box. Located under the desk, people could ask, "Did you find?" But you know how that works. Until, as time marches on, we get a new boss. Karen seems overused, but since my post was removed for using an acronym, Karen it shall be. Devilish angry face. Karen did not like our lost and found setup. Instead, things had to go on a shelf behind the desk so everyone could see everything. What? That is so ridiculous. Can you imagine how many things would be found? Oh, I lost that thing up there. I like the way that looks. I mean, that's mine. I lost it last week. Presuming they maybe remember that they had lost a particular item, this policy lasted maybe a week before we noticed a big problem. As public places tend to do, we attracted our fair share of idiots and jerks, including Jim. He came in one morning and upon seeing this new shelf of treasures, immediately claims everything on the shelf is his. Shocking. That glittery pink onesie? His. That well-used pacifier? His. That one odd glove that had been sitting in the box for months? His. We all knew darn well that it wasn't his, and said so. And every time, Karen would override us. If he says it's his, it's his. Give it to him. Besides, he's clearing out this stuff, so who cares? Until the almost final straw. One of our regulars was a mom, and her kid, toddler age. Could walk but had a stroller just in case. Usually well behaved and always had Mr. Giraffe with him. And one day, Mr. Giraffe somehow got left behind. We immediately called the mom. They hadn't even made it home yet, and Kiddo is having a meltdown. She says she's turning the car around and should arrive in about 20 minutes. No worries, we'll take good care of him. Showed Kiddo a picture of Mr. G checking out a book. Disaster averted. Or so we thought. Karen decrees that Mr. G be placed on the shelf with everything else, just in time for Jerky Jim to spot it and declare it his. The entire building staff is yelling that it is not his. Mom is on her way to get it, etc. But Karen will not be moved. She hands it over anyway because he says it's his. Sure enough, Mom comes and no Mr. G, but we know where he is. Someone gets Karen out of her office and as a group heads straight for Jim. We demand he return the giraffe, and of course, he has no clue what we're talking about. Strange thing about kids sometimes. They see closer to the ground, and sure enough, Mr. G is poking out of Jim's backpack. Kiddo grabs it with a shout of joy, and all Karen can do is stammer, But he said it was his. While the rest of us are saying, we told you it wasn't. Now, you would think we're done. But we haven't gotten to the malicious compliance yet. Sorry, y'all. Shortly after the giraffe incident, Karen and Jim are still playing their games. Karen heads to a conference and leaves behind a very distinctive, very expensive-looking water cooler, the insulated tumbler style. Bigger than a 1-cup morning commute mug, but not a big jug either. Which, you can see this coming, Jim immediately claims as his. I swear he was almost hopping with glee at his latest find. A week later, Karen returns, only to find that Jim has her cooler. She tries to confront him. But all I have to do is say it's mine, and they have to give it to me, that's the rule. We finally got our box beneath the desk that afternoon, and Jim had to describe anything he was going to try making a claim on. Edits. Karen was told by all of us that Mom was on the way to get Mr. G, and we were hiding him under the desk. Karen put it on the shelf and then handed it to Jim since none of us would do it for her. Jim tried to claim that Mr. G was a chew toy for his dog. Not that any of us believed him, of course. After the box went back under the desk, it took a while to break Jim's habit. Every day, anybody turn anything in? Answer was either no or sure. What did you lose? What does it look like? Took a while, but he finally quit asking. And yes, Jim had other issues, but they don't seem to fit anywhere, like the daily blizzard of powder in the men's restroom. Dang, Jim, if you need that much powder, go see a doctor. In the comments, someone asked, what does Jim get from claiming that random stuff? Most of it only has worth to the rightful owner. Francis replied, likely not rational. I was cleaning my garage once, and my rather eccentric elderly neighbor across the street walked over to talk to me. After chatting for a bit, they asked if they could have an old, partially used gallon of white paint, randomly, as they were staring at that very thing I had just moved. I didn't need it. I have zero faith that they actually needed it. But some people just feel like they're getting a prize, I guess. Like, heck girl, have some dried out old paint. Edit. To be clear how weird it was, they didn't phrase it like, could I have that can? It was more like, hey, I would like to have an old partial gallon of white paint. Do you have one I could take? While they stared at it. Let's get this party on asked, what human could watch a little kid not get their stuffy back? Cool Beans Chili replied, a dehydrated witch. Almark Devaka said, it's never a problem until it's their problem. I love libraries and can attest to the fact that all sorts of people go to the library. It is a sacred place that welcomes all, which is why this lost and found policy, insert massive air quotes, has to be one of the stupidest ideas I have ever heard. Is Karen new to the library or new to interacting with people in general? Of course people are going to try claim-free things. You know, like the people that take all the extra napkins and condiments at a fast food joint. Who, me? No, I haven't done that. Never. Okay, maybe once. The fact that Karen couldn't admit she was wrong, well, she did say who cares, and she ate those words up like a tasty donut. I bet it was a Yeti mug of the $50 variety. Oh, Karen. And that's it for today. Until next time, shine bright, Starlight. If you've enjoyed the story and would like to hear more, consider liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment. Thanks, and bye for now.